Many people will invest in buy-to-let property for the long-term returns. It's not going to get you rich overnight, but it will get you massively successful over time. But how do you know which is the right location, which is the best place to invest? There's recently been some groundbreaking research, and I'm going to share that with you in this video, the top 5 places to invest. And I can tell you straight away, Birmingham did not make the cut. It came in at number 24. Do we have to do this video if Birmingham's not even on the list? If you're watching my videos for the first time, my name is Saj Hussain, and on this channel, I share with you my 15 years of property investing experience to ultimately help you get further faster in your own property investing journey. When it comes to the location, getting that location right in investing is absolutely important. Some people just choose to invest on their doorstep, which is kind of literally what I choose to do, which is only invest in Birmingham and the surrounding areas, whereas other people look for where's the best possible returns you can get for your money over time and choose to go and invest in those locations. And other people might tend to spread around their risk a little bit rather than investing all their money in one town or city by picking 2 or 3 locations just to spread it around a little bit and not to have all their eggs in one basket. So some research was done very recently by Aldermore Bank. They're a specialist buy-to-let lender. What their research has found, there's some key things that mean certain towns and cities just remain in those top spots. But also there's been some changes very recently in terms of properties making it into that list that weren't there before. So what's the criteria that they're using to make these measurements? Let me share those with you. When doing research like this, there needs to be a criteria that they're going to follow to be able to determine how they're going to rank these particular properties. And what they do, they use 5 key criteria. The first one that they use is the average total rent. So what they do, they look at how much rent typically on average you might be getting in that particular town or city. Then they look at the best overall short-term returns through yield. What kind of return are you getting immediately for your investment? Then they'll consider the long-term returns through house price growth over the past decade. So essentially what they're doing is looking over the last 10 years, how prices may have changed and how that impacts your overall return. The fourth indicator is the lowest number of vacancies as a proportion of the total housing stock. Essentially what they're looking at is how many voids are typically in those properties, how many empty properties are available up for rent at any one moment in time versus the volume of property in that town. And finally, the fifth and final indicator they use is what's the percentage of renters in that overall town and city. So they look at the total population, how much of that population are actually renting property. Using the research, they've just published the top 50 for the UK. So let's get a drum roll going and let's start with number 1. No, actually, let's start with number 5 first. Let's keep that suspense going. So number 5 is a new entry into the list, which wasn't one that was there before. Luton has made it into the top 5 primarily due to the consistent house price growth. Over the last decade or so, what we've found is Luton price have increased about 5.2% pretty much every single year. Now that kind of growth isn't usually seen very often, and what it means, it's a great place for buy-to-let investors to be able to invest. I remember when I was at university and a couple of my friends, my housemates used to be from Luton at the time, and they used to talk about Luton's a great place. I was never convinced, but maybe, hey, my thoughts may be changing right now that it's made it into the top 5. And of course, you've got to take into consideration things like it's very close to London. So as London becomes so much more expensive, people want to be able to get into London. So the nearer towns and cities often benefit from that, especially if there's good transport links. The fourth best place to invest when it comes to buy-to-let investing is Manchester. There is no surprise there. Manchester has been absolutely booming over the last few years with the amount of development that's happening there, the infrastructure improvements happening, the businesses that are relocating there. Hey, some people even say it's overtaking Birmingham and becoming the second city. I personally disagree. I still think Birmingham's the second city, but hey, some amazing things have been happening in Manchester, and I know a number of investors have been doing really well over the years. Number 3 in terms of the best place to invest is Cambridge, follows closely by number 2, Oxford. And both of these are no surprise whatsoever, particularly with them being the big university towns. Now, of course, with them being so popular overseas, we get a huge amount of people coming to work and study at those universities. Also, you'll get people that have graduated from those universities that'll stay on, maybe doing research or even work in those areas as well. And of course, you've got the lot of research, medical research that happens around those universities as well. So massive amount of demand, always being very strong when it comes to rental returns. But of course, you need a big chunks of cash to be able to get in and buy in the first place as well. But that will often be the case when we start talking about the top 3-4 places to invest. You start needing to put down larger deposits. The yields are often quite low at the beginning, but the capital returns are much higher. And this is why many people choose to invest in buy-to-let property, not because the immediate cash flow that you're going to get, but the long-term capital growth that you'll get on the property. Number 1 for the best place to invest in the UK when it comes to buy-to-let investment for people looking to make an amazing return over time, there's enough build up there. Let's just get straight to the point. Number one is Bristol. Bristol's always been a great place to invest, particularly over the last 10 years. Just like Luton, you've seen consistent capital growth in the region of about 5% every year. So this means not only is it a great place to be able to let the properties quite quickly because there's good strong demand. In fact, about a quarter of the city rent, so there's a strong demand there, but it means over time that you'll get really good returns from capital growth on those properties. Some people buy property, hold them on for a few years and sell on. I remember again when I was at university, some of the parents, what they would do at the time, they'd purchase a house for little Johnny to stay in while he's at university, and once little Johnny finished university, graduated, they'd sell the house. So doing those 4 years, not only did it mean that little Johnny stayed rent free, but also they got some great capital growth from that property as well, and maybe help him get started on his first home too. Research like this can be helpful, but really it should be taken with a pinch of salt because it's not going to be accurate analysis. When you're looking at where to invest for the long term, there's lots of different factors that you need to think about. So this sort of research, for example, doesn't even show London on the list, and many people, London is a favorite place for them to invest. London on this list made it at position number 6. Now, it doesn't mean to say London is not a good place to invest. In fact, I think over the long term, London's one of the best places to invest because the kind of capital growth that you've seen, you don't really see that anywhere else. That happens even when London goes through a slight challenge or suppression in terms of market prices like it did recently, it bounces back very quickly. And even when we had the credit crunch 10-12 years ago and the prices collapsed at that point, London was one of the first cities to recover in terms of prices. Not only is it the capital of the country, but of course overseas investors like to see as a very safe place to invest and keep money, which means there's lots of buyers all the time, the prices constantly push up. So as we start getting out of this COVID environment and start getting back to some kind of normality, you'll start seeing investors come back and start investing in places like London as well. And overseas investors are a key driver as well in terms of competition when we're looking to buy property, because they're looking to park their cash. Their return on expectations may not necessarily be the same as yours as well. So doing research on what's right for you is going to be the key thing. There are so many pockets across the country where there can be fantastic returns that can be achieved not only for cash flow right now, but also for steady long-term growth. In fact, I talked about Birmingham earlier on, not even making on this list. Personally, I think it's an amazing place to invest. There's just so many opportunities here. But for example, even in Birmingham, there's pockets within the city where we know certain prices will probably improve much more so than other parts of the city. So your local knowledge is absolutely important. Knowledge like this, what we're sharing here, is very generic and very high level, but it's a starting point in terms of where you should be looking. So for example, in this research, they talked about Wales not being so popular in terms of what it was before, and the prices are declining, particularly around Cardiff and Newport as well. There've been less rental demand, voids have been higher. And I know some people are investing in Wales doing very well right now. So remember, this kind of research is quite subjective, but hopefully a starting point for you. Scotland is a place we rarely talk about on this property channel, and that's really because property in that country is different in terms of how investing works, the rules and regulations, and even in terms of general purchases as well. But it doesn't mean it should be dismissed in place of buy-to-let investing. Particular likes of Edinburgh and Glasgow, there's some really strong short-term rental yields can be achieved there. That means there's lots of demand, you can get really high rents for what you pay for the property, but long-term capital growth hasn't quite been the same as some of the other places, but of course it's still worth considering, particularly if that's where you are and that's close to where you're looking to invest anyway. Hey, look, if you've enjoyed this content, then you're really going to enjoy this video over here, which is why Birmingham is such a hot spot. Hey, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but it's a great video nevertheless, so make sure you watch that, and I look forward to seeing you on there. But just before you do that, click on my face down here to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you over on the next video.